Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am joined here, as always, by the man who may or may not be holding out for the preseason. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know about holding out for the preseason, but I just want to remind the audience here that the Yankees had a 4-game series this weekend with the Red Sox and led all 4 games at one point and lost 3 of those games. So just want to remind that to everybody. And they also had a no-hitter in the 8th inning of today's game that they lost. So good stuff there.
Yeah. Oh, Kyle, how the mighty have fallen. Celebrating regular season series is now.
Oh, my gosh. Hey, man, we're in first place. That's all that matters. Looking for the playoffs.
No, yeah, this has been usually I'm very happy to make fun of the Yankees. This is one of the rare times that I'm rooting for the Yankees to win, and they screw that up. The Yankees can do nothing right.
Yeah, they stink.
Yeah, it's not good. It's a 2-horse race in the AL East. All right. Today we will not be talking about the AL East. We will be talking about the NFC North. This is a fun division. I think this is one that when we set this out to do this is one we're excited to talk about. There's, I think, something interesting to talk about with all 4 of these teams. It should be a fun show today. #fun show.
Always a #fun show. Yeah, the NFC North is really competitive. I have it as the 6th best division in football. But that being said, I do think there's a huge gap between 6 and then 7 and 8. Those 2 divisions just seem like the worst for me. But yeah, I think the NFC North is really good. I think there's one, as of right now, with the way their roster is, clear-cut playoff team, and then a couple fringe playoff teams maybe if things go their way. So it should be a really fun division.
Yeah, exactly. So just before we get too into this, everyone, make sure you follow us on Twitter. Yes, Kyle, let them know what our Twitter accounts are.
Yeah, make sure to follow him at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Grondin. That's GRONDIN by Kyle Grondin on Twitter. And then make sure to follow us at On the Sideline JK on Twitter. That's at On the Sideline JK for any show updates, anything like that. Yeah, make sure to follow us there.
Yeah. Also, you can find the audio-only file. That should be anywhere you get your podcast. You can do that. Without further ado, why don't we just get into this podcast, the meat of this episode. Kyle, why don't you let people know how this is going to work?
Yeah, so once again, like I said, I've ranked all the divisions. Like I said, I had this as the 6th best division in football. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from 4 to 1, ranking the teams in the division. So I'll rank each of these teams based on where I think they're going to finish during the 2021 season. From there, Jackson's constructed an algorithm that adds win shares basically together, something along those lines. And we're going to break down each of these position groups and talk about it more in depth. So you're going to get more in-depth coverage of all of your teams, starting with the number 4 team in the NFC North. Does that sound good to you?
Yes, sounds good. I think I've maybe come to the realization I'm not sure how many people understand my system, but I understand it very well. So just go with it, whatever I say.
Yeah, whatever Jackson says is probably right. So,
all right. So why don't you go ahead? Number 4. Where are you going with it? I'm hoping for you to say the Packers and just throw everything. Just completely start this off with complete chaos.
Not going complete chaos here. I'm actually really excited to watch this team this year. It is still going to be the Detroit Lions for me. I think that's pretty much the consensus across the board. Listen, of number 4 teams in their divisions, this is the team I'm most excited to watch this season. We all definitely took our shots at Dan Campbell when he said he's going to bite kneecaps off during the regular season at his first press conference. Then he goes into the draft and free agency, and he constructs a team that's built to bite kneecaps off. I'm excited for this offensive line. I'm buying very high on DeAndre Swift during fantasy season. I think that there's some really interesting pieces on this team. TJ Hawkinson's going to be one of the best tight ends in the league. I think this is going to be really fun to watch. That being said, I just don't think there's enough talent here. I kept looking at it. I kept looking for excuses to put this team in 3rd in the division. I just don't think there's enough talent, and that's going to hurt it this season. But they're on the right track, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I think that's fair. And I think that there's some stuff to really be excited for. There's some stuff to really sit here and say that's an issue. So I agree. I also have them at number 4. Starting off with Dan Campbell, who I believe he did not say he was going to be personally biting kneecaps. It's more of he wants his team to be biting kneecaps. That'd be an odd move for a head coach to bite a kneecap.
I mean, if he wants to jump on the field like Mike Tomlin style, instead of tripping the guy, just going
Sure.
straight for the knees. I mean,
Uh,
do whatever he wants, I guess.
Yeah, that has to be a 15-yard penalty, I would assume. He ended up being 29th in the coaching rankings. Again, rookie head coaches only, the bottom two head coaches weren't rookies. Everyone else was, from that point on, it was all rookies. So that's why he's low, but that is going to hurt them for this year. And then quarterback Jared Goff, he's a tier 3 quarterback. He's not a horrible quarterback. I do think the perception of him has dropped off simply because Sean McVay gave up on him, but he's still the same guy he was last year. It's not like he became a different person. So he's still a tier 3 quarterback for me.
I'm interested to watch him this season. Now that he's going to be away from this McVay offense, who, by a lot of accounts is probably going to be a top, 10 offensive play caller in the league, McVay. So he's going to be away from that sort of system. And, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of works out. And I think we're kind of going to see the real Jared Goff. Clearly, McVay didn't love something, or maybe he just thought, hey, Matt Stafford's a clear upgrade, so why don't I just do it? And the Rams have always shown that they're in it to win Super Bowls. It doesn't matter what they're sacrificing for the future. They want to win. So maybe they just looked at it as Stafford's a clear upgrade. Let's just do it. Or maybe they just felt like Goff is just not the answer. So I'm interested to see it. I think he'll be fine. And he's got some weapons to work with here. So it'll be interesting to see him. I don't know if he's going to be the long-term option, though.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Also, Jake Thornton with a great point in the chat. Biting kneecaps seems like it would be really hard. He also follows up with, I personally don't know if I have the neck strength to bite kneecaps. Yeah, how would you bite a kneecap? But that's a very, very good point. I'm not sure if you would do too much damage. I think there's maybe better places to bite.
Dan Campbell, come on the pod and explain it to us. I want to know.
Yeah, does Dan Campbell just have like a jaw of steel or something?
He must, honestly.
I mean, every other part of his body is jacked. Why not his teeth as well? Moving on, not trying to get too sidetracked here. Yeah, I think I agree with what everything said about Goff. Moving on to halfbacks, it's another tier 3 for me with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. You said you're high on DeAndre Swift, at least for fantasy purposes. Why so?
Well, I just think he's going to be running behind an awesome offensive line, which is going to help. It's a young offensive line, and he struggled out of the gate, and everyone was talking about that drop to start the season, and that was a big thing. Mm-hmm. And I think he just, he got better and better as the season went along, I thought. He ended up with almost 5 yards of carry by the end of the year in a limited role, and I think that this year now he's going to have some stuff figured out. He'll have a full training camp, and I think that he's going to make a bigger leap this season. And like I said, the offensive line, it wasn't a bad offensive line last season, but it's certainly a lot better this season, and I think it's going to make some noise.
Yes. Also in the chat, someone has said that apparently Jamal Williams has demonstrated how you could bite a kneecap. So it's good to see that they're working out the logistics of that already. But yeah, I think that all that is very fair. And also, I do like Jamal Williams as the player as well. Like I think he's a solid number 2 back. So that's why they got a complete backfield. It might not be, there's no Dalvin Cook here, but it's a good backfield.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good backfield, and Jamar Jefferson's a guy I like too. So there's guys on this roster that I really like. I think they're going to be able to cycle a lot of these guys in and make some plays.
Yeah, sorry, I was blowing my nose. Got caught in the middle. But yeah, I think I agree. Let's go to one of the real. There's 2 glaring issues I have in this football team. The first is the wide receiving core. This was the 32nd ranked wide receiving core, according to me, with Tyrell Williams maybe being the number 1 guy and Brashad Perriman maybe being the number 2 guy. You also have Quentin Cephas, who is a 5th rounder entering his 2nd year. You have they drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they added Geronimo Allison, who has a great name, not necessarily the best outside of that. Their clear number 1 option is TJ Hawkinson, and they do have Darren Fells, so their tight end group is good, but the real lack of wide receiver talent, and kind of what I've talked about is I care a lot about, wide receivers and coverage, and this is not a great wide receiving core.
Yeah, so the issue is that we saw an offense last season with Brashad Perriman as the number 1 option. It wasn't very pretty. So, no. I mean, listen, you can look at this and say TJ Hawkinson is the number 1 option, and he could be. And I think he is going to be this season. I think he could have a big year. It's just going to be, what is his ceiling going to be, especially with the guys around him not giving him a lot of space over the middle. I think it'll be interesting to see. The one sleeper here I think could be Quintez Cephas. He had a really weird college stuff going on, including like accused of stuff and
Okay.
all that kind of being
Mhm.
dropped his senior year, and it kind of derailed his college career. But he was really talented at Wisconsin before all that went down, and he could have been a second or third round pick, honestly, I think, if that didn't happen. So I think Cephas could be a sleeper in this group, but I mean, I'm not expecting him to jump in and be a number one wide receiver option his first year too. So I think that's going to
Mhm.
be a difficult thing, and it really just comes down to, can Hawkinson make the leap to, like, if he can hit like a Darren Waller kind of level this season, maybe then like you feel a little better about this group. But at the same time, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he's Hawkinson's really good. Hawkinson had a really good second year. I do think a lot of his receiving yards did come from like just getting in the right place in the zone, but still, that's what a tight end Travis Kelce has a Hall of Fame career out of largely doing exactly that. So there's some real value there, and again, Hawkinson's a great blocker as well. That does not factor into the this grouping, but Hawkinson is another one. He's again, they're building their team around a tight end, it seems, which maybe isn't the smartest move because you'd rather have a quarterback or something. But he is a great talent, and he might be the best player on this football team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I'm interested about with this Lions team is there's kind of the foundations here. Like, as part of your algorithm says, offensive line and defensive line aren't the biggest predicators to success, but you still
Mm-hmm.
need and it's the same thing. It's like buying a house. You want the solar panels, you want all the interesting stuff to a house, but all houses still need a foundation, and they're starting with that stuff, and they're starting with that foundation. It's going to take a little more stuff to kind of move along before this team can be competitive, I think, and they're going in the right direction.
Yeah. So they're getting a car that has a nice engine instead of going on Pimp My Ride with a car that's about to die any day now.
There's no PlayStation 3 in the trunk of the car like Pimp My Ride.
Right. Exactly. Uh,
Actually, Pimp My Ride would be a PlayStation 2. That's how old that show is.
yes. Okay. Join us next week for our Pimp My Ride recap. They should bring that back.
I mean, honestly, I'd be about it. Just find like
Yeah.
these like old minivans and just
Yeah, why not? Sure. Let's talk about that foundation, the offensive line. It's really how I like to build an offensive line, where they're getting the tackles in center, and then guards you can find, solid pieces. So you have Taylor Decker, and obviously they drafted Penei Sewell. You also have Frank Ragnow as the center. So all of that is fantastic. The guards, you get a bit of a drop off with Jonah Jackson, and it's a Hawaiian name. I think I'm not even going to try to. I meant to do this before the show and figure out how to pronounce it. I forgot to do that. Vatai is his last name. It's one of those very long first names, but again, he's solid as well. This actually just missed tier 1 for me. Top 5 make tier 1. It was number 6, so tier 2, but a very good offensive line.
Yeah, and we're both extremely high on Penei Sewell, and stepping in at the right tackle spot, I think he's going to be awesome. Him and Decker is obviously very good. Ragnow is obviously very good. I mean, this is exactly what you want, like you said, out of an offensive line, and it's definitely, I think, going to do some damage this year. And why I'm so excited about the running game, I think it's going to be awesome, and it's also going to help Jared Goff too. So I'm interested to see this group overall. I think this is the strength of the offense, which, like you said, you don't know the ceiling in offense when the strength is the offensive line, but it certainly helps to have a really good one too. So this is going to be a fun group to watch.
Well, this is probably the way that they view their offense working. I have it as the 23rd best offense due to this system. But the way that, again, maybe part of the system where it could fail is the fact that, these things aren't played on paper. And if you have a strategy, you can get more or less wins due to it. And I think that their clear strategy is going to be run the ball often, take advantage of this offensive line, take advantage of a solid halfback room, let Jared Goff then go to play action where you can kind of have guys sit down in zone coverage like TJ Hawkinson. You don't need necessarily guys to win in one-on-one coverage. I still think that enough of the game is, at a certain point, it's going to come down to, you're going to have a guy win one-on-ones, but at least you can move the ball down the field that way.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that, if Cephas, turns out to be, has a really good rookie year and just puts it together, then this could be a pretty darn good offense. I just don't know if it's ever going to hit like a top 10 level this season until they make some clear upgrades.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We'll go on to the defense. Another 32nd overall ranking for them is in their coverage unit. And it's tough when you have multiple the two things I say are underrated: coverage and wide receivers. Well, I have them as worst in the league in both. Jeff Okudah is the big question mark. With Okudah, and part of it, what we're going to talk about with all these Lions players is there's a real potential that some of these guys are going to really turn it around once Matt Patricia is gone and they have a different defensive coordinator. There's that chance. Right now, though, Okudah probably would have to be at least a top 2 corner. You have Amani Awurie, who was good last year, and they drafted Afidi Milan. Geez, these names are Milanwu in the 3rd round. These names are tough. Yeah. These Detroit Lions names. Quinn Dunbar as well. They have. So those are the corners. It's not like a disaster. The safeties, Tracy Walker and Will Harris. Also, that kind of makes it worse when it's like, okay, not the best corners, and they don't have safeties they can really lean on. They're linebackers, Jamie Collins, Alex Alonze, and Jelani Tavai might be the strong spot of this coverage unit, but it's still tier 5 for me.
Yeah, I mean, this is a rough group, and the thing is we've continued to say that maybe guys like cornerbacks typically take a year to figure things out, a year or two. Mm-hmm. The issue is that Okudah looks so bad. Yeah. It just looked really bad at times. So we'll see what happens. The other one on this team too is Quentin Dunbar. It was really weird how bad he was last year. Just really weird how far he dropped off. And it wasn't even like he went from because he was really good the year before, and then he went to just not competitive. And he was just losing every battle, it seemed like. So maybe he has a bounce back year. That could be a possibility. And then, like you said, maybe Okudah figures some things out. Then they have 3 pretty solid corners out there. But at the same time, are you betting on Dunbar figuring it out after what you saw last year? Are you betting on Jeff Okudah to all of a sudden get at least playable after what you saw last year? I think that's the tough part is you're hoping a lot for the Lions, but there's no real promise here right now.
Well, yeah, and I think Okudah is a great example of why I harp so much during the draft on 40 time. Where we can say all we want about footwork and positioning, but when people are just blowing by Okudah, there's no way you can fix that. If you're getting beat with speed, you're getting beat with speed. You can't. He's not going to get faster. So that is an issue.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with him, but yeah, I mean they're going to hope he's going to be good, but at the same time, you looked at a bunch of those corners that went in the first round. It wasn't a great corner draft, but then CJ Henderson at least looked better. There were just guys who look better, I thought, throughout the roster.
Yeah, I agree. For top 3 pick, it hasn't worked out yet. Maybe he'll turn it around. Again, getting away from Matt Patricia, that's going to be great for everybody wearing a Detroit Lions uniform, offense and defense. Front 7 now. For the interior, you have Michael Brockers, who plays inside and out, interior defensive line and edge. You have John Peninsky, and you have Levi Onwuzurike. Got that difficult name down. Onwuzurike, a guy I'm very excited to see what he does. You also have Romeo Okora, who's maybe the best player that people don't really know. I feel like a lot of people don't even know who he is, but he's probably he's good. He's a good edge rusher. He's not elite, but he's good. And you have Trey Flowers as well, one of the few guys who's actually had success in the Matt Patricia scheme. And linebackers, already talked about them. So I guess my issue is there's not a lot of elite talent. There is some potential here. I would love to see Okora maybe take a next step now that he's not the only guy rushing the passer. I think that this could be an interesting. There's a lot of potential here. I don't know how much I feel confident in it. As of right now, the run defense is still tier 5. I had the pass rush only 1 spot away from tier 3, but it is tier 4 right now. So I had a couple 1 spot aways, but this ends up being a 0-win defense for me with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, and that's the biggest issue is there's just not enough guys on this team, right? You like Trey Flowers, you like Michael Brockers, you like the promise of Onwuzurike. I mean, you even like some plays from Jamie Collins too, but at the same time, there's just not enough dudes on this team. And that's going to be the biggest downfall. And, like I said, I like the promise that this team has. I like the direction it's going in. It's just going to take more drafts. It's going to take more times at the wheel, basically adding talent to this team because so much damage was done with the past regime. So I think give this team a couple of years and it'll be fine. But yeah, I mean, this group just looks rough, honestly. I think, Flowers and Brockers can be, interesting and could kind of have good games together. But at the same time, I don't think they can carry a defense.
Yeah, well, and again, kind of what I always talk about is I don't care if it's great if you can get pressure consistently, but if guys are getting open consistently, it doesn't do as much as you think it would. So that's kind of the issue. Again, I know 0-win defense sounds weird because they have a tier 4, but there's no advantage from having a tier 4 to tier 5. Those are end up giving you the same amount of wins. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that there is some upside, and I think that this is something I could see myself at the end of the season saying, you know what, I got that wrong. Their defense was better than 31st in the NFL, only ahead of the Texans because they had all tier 5s. But just because of, again, the coaching change. But I have to see it to believe it, and I still do stand by talent does win out. Even talent can overcome bad coaching, but I'm not sure if it can overcome horrible coaching, and that is what happened. I can't stress enough how bad current New England Patriots coach Matt Patricia was last year.
Yeah, I mean, it was rough. And yeah, it's just, it's going to be an interesting situation. Like I said, I think the one thing is I could just see this as a team I enjoy watching. You know, I'm going to have Sunday ticket and I'm going to need that fourth corner game basically on my TV. I wouldn't mind putting a couple Lions games on this year just because I'm interested in seeing this team. I can see them grit out a couple like 2019 victories. I kind of see this team doing that and kind of doing it to maybe a 4 or 5 win season. I just don't see it doing any better than that this season until they add some more talent to the team.
Yeah. So despite the fact that the Lions have 4.39 wins on their offense, they end up with only 4.1 total wins. They go negative because of the coaching brings them down. They do have Randy Bullock as a tier 4 kicker as well. So that's the Detroit Lions. Any final thoughts on them?
No, I think we wrapped it up with the Lions. We can move on here to number 3. And while the Lions could be bad and I'm excited to watch them, this team could be good, and I hope I watch 0 games this season. I'm not looking forward to watching this team anymore. I'm so tired of the Matt Nagy experience. I had the Chicago Bears at number 3. I mean, look, there's going to be some things that they grade out very well on, and they're probably going to do some things pretty well this season. I'm just not looking forward to watching it anymore. The offense feels very uninventive. Everything about it just feels very uninventive to me. This is a make or break season, I feel like, for Matt Nagy. We're going to see how this goes. They've been doubling and tripling down on Andy Dalton's the starting quarterback. So we'll see what happens with this group overall, but I'm just not looking forward to watching it. And I do feel like that this could be Matt Nagy's last season.
Yeah, so Nagy finished 23rd in the coaching rankings, so that means you lose a little over a third of a win there. He did finish ahead of the rookie head coaches, so he has that going for him. There's been this weird, let's just talk about Nagy for a second. There's been this weird kind of narrative that all of a sudden people are saying, Matt Nagy, once he gets quarterback, look out. He's going to really surprise some people. I think he's going to surprise nobody. I think this is not going to work out. In fact, I feel very confident this is Matt Nagy's last year as a coach.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely feel that way too. And the quarterback situation doesn't bring me promise either. Their solution to figuring out their quarterback problems from last season, which was a struggling Mitch Trubisky and a struggling Nick Foles, is to bring in Andy Dalton, who struggled in Dallas too last season, coming in as a backup. Maybe Dalton finds a little bit of magic, but at the same time, haven't we basically got the book on Andy Dalton now? He's not going to move your franchise one way or another. It just kind of feels like it's going to be more of the same. So I'll ask you, do we see Justin Fields this year?
I think we do. The Dalton line, which, if you remember, what the Dalton line is this is invented by the great Chris Wessling, R.I.P. But with the Round of NFL podcast, who he talked with the Dalton line being Dalton is sort of a boat on the water. He rises with the tide. If your team is talented around him, they do well. If the team is not talented around him, he does poorly. And I think this is not a great talent around him. At some point, you're going to break glass in case of emergency. You're going to put in Justin Fields. I do have this as a tier 5 quarterback tandem. Whichever way you want to go. We should probably talk about Fields for a second, because I know that's a hot button issue. There's people that love Fields. There's people that do not love Fields. I do not love Justin Fields. I think he's a project. I've said I think I can see the upside with him for sure, but I think the biggest thing he's going to have to figure out is how to keep himself safe, how to keep himself out of pressure. When teams blitz in college, he very rarely did anything about it, and a good chunk of not avoiding sacks is on the quarterback. And there's a reason why every offensive line Tom Brady plays with looks better. There's a reason why every offensive line that Josh Rosen played with looked horrible. Part of it is the quarterback, and I think Fields has to work on that. And no one really talks about that, but I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is a project. And one of the things is, even when I said I liked Fields, is I was hoping he'd go into the right situation, whether that was a team like Atlanta and an Arthur Smith kind of system, or a situation like that. I really wanted to see him in the right situation. I'm not sure that what I saw from Matt Nagy last year means this is the right situation for me. Not to mention, this isn't an awesome offensive line either in front of him. So, like you said, bad offensive lines look decent with good quarterbacks, and good offensive lines look great with good quarterbacks. I mean, if there's a guy who struggles with pressure with the bad offensive line, him coming into this game has a chance to be looked bad, right? So it's going to be interesting to look at this group overall. But yeah, I mean, I think there are some questions with him, and the situation I don't think helps him a whole lot either.
Here's what I think ends up happening. I could be wrong, but here's what I think ends up happening. Andy Dalton doesn't do well. A few weeks in, Justin Fields comes in. Justin Fields doesn't have a great season, and Matt Nagy becomes a scapegoat, even if that's not necessarily totally fair.
I could see it happening. But at the same time, I could see Fields having a couple bad games after coming in, and Matt Nagy getting the boot midseason. So, yeah. I mean, if this goes south for the Bears and they're not in playoff contention, I see Nagy leaving sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and again, I know a lot of people like Fields, so that's part of the fun of sports is we all give our opinions, we do as much research as possible, and then we just see what happens. That's kind of what makes it fun. So I could be wrong about that. We'll move on to the running backs. You have David Montgomery, one of the real underrated backs in the league, along with Tariq Cohen, who didn't play much last year, but has always been a good pass-catching back. And they also added playoff Damian Williams from Kansas City. So you have a tier 2 running back room for me.
Yeah, and Montgomery kind of made me eat crow a little bit last season because I kept making fun of all this hype around him his rookie year, and I just seemed to watch him run it straight into his offensive guards at times. Last year, especially by the end of the year, I thought he was doing a lot better, and I thought he was just making really good cuts. He looked explosive. He had a really good end of the season, I thought, with Chicago. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be really good this next season, and I think, Cohen healthy can only help, too, as that pass-catching guy. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I mean, I think Montgomery is definitely, I think, the strength of this offense right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I guess the other strength would be, we'll go to wide receivers. Allen Robinson is maybe the best player, but again, in terms of position grouping, the issue is that if you double Robinson, where else do you go? You have Darnell Mooney, who, he's a 5th rounder last year, and there's people who are excited about him, but I kind of think he's just kind of okay. That's just been what I've seen. You also have, Marquise Goodwin, Javon Wims, Demir Bird. They got rid of Anthony Miller recently this past week, so they don't have him anymore. And then for tight ends, Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham. We could see Kmet maybe take that second-year tight end jump. And Jimmy Graham, who we all made fun of that contract, actually been a pretty nice get for them. It's a tier 3 wide receiving group, but it's largely tier 3 just because you can throw the ball up to Allen Robinson. That's it. Without Allen Robinson, it's a tier 5. I mean, he's good enough to put him up to tier 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kmet does to get better this season, so that will help. And yeah, Robinson is fantastic. He's probably top 10 to 12 receiver in the league. I hate when everyone says top 5 receiver in the league because there can only be 5 top 5 receivers.
Right.
But somehow like 30 guys make the list.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting group for sure. And, I mean, he's the guy. And then obviously they traded Miller thinking Mooney is the guy. And they think he's going to be the number 2 option. And he very well could be the number 2 option. We'll see how he does in that role. There was some promise last year. I think they're very excited about him. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't hate Mooney or anything. I'm not willing to say, I feel like I'm not willing to put him up as like, oh, he's a great number 2 option. I'm not willing to go there just yet. There's some reason for optimism.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I don't think it's an awesome group overall, but it does have Allen Robinson, so that helps.
Yeah, and to clear up some conversation, I said they'd probably be tier 5 without Robinson. It doesn't necessarily mean like it probably would be like a fringe tier 4 without Robinson, but that's anyways. We'll move on. Offensive line now. They drafted Tevin Jenkins. That was a really good pickup for a 2nd round pick. They traded up, and that was the right move, I think. They needed to improve the offensive line, which had some real issues last year. It's also part of it was injuries, but they also have Jermaine Ifedi. You have for the guards, James Daniels, who has been a top 20-ish guard over the course of his career. And you have Sam Mustafa, who typically plays center. Looks like he'll be a guard because you have Cody Whitehair, who I believe will be will be the guard. So it's still not great. The Tevin Jenkins thing helps, but there's not a lot of star power here. I like Cody Whitehair, but this is a tier 4 offensive line for me.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked the Tevin Jenkins pick, and I really liked him heading into the draft as just kind of this monster at right tackle. The problem is that he's now being stuck at left tackle, which he basically didn't play, and I don't know why this kind of happened. I've yet to hear an explanation that makes sense for the Charles Leno thing. Like, just cutting him in the middle of the offseason. I didn't understand the move at all. I thought he was pretty good as a left tackle, and I really liked him and Tevin Jenkins at right tackle. They cut Leno and moved Jenkins, who didn't play left tackle in college, to right tackle. I didn't really get that at all. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I really like Jenkins. Maybe he just moves over just fine. That was just a really weird move to me, where I thought they were actually building something that could be really good on this line, and then they just kind of blew that up.
Yeah, and David K in the chat says Chicago's O-line has no depth. It is weird when it's like depth is already an issue, and now you're just getting rid of guys for nothing.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with it. I mean, I thought that it looked like it was getting better, and then now, like, even with getting Jenkins, is this kind of a net negative because they let Leno go?
Probably. I mean, it's tough to say with rookies, but yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough situation for them. We'll see what happens, but this is definitely something I'm not excited to see about with this team.
Yeah, so as a whole, offense, not great. 27th in the NFL for me.
And that feels fair. Even with talented players like Montgomery and Robinson, they're still just a bad offensive line, bad quarterbacks, not very good pass catchers behind Robinson, and then a coach who just, I think, struggles to make sound decisions with his team and his personnel. He was driving me crazy last year with how he managed Trubisky and Foles. Now, granted, how much could you do with Trubisky and Foles? But I don't see it getting better this next season.
Yeah, the real way that the offense can improve is if they hit the Justin Fields pick out of the park. That's what has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if he looks awesome and has like that Herbert kind of season, then, I mean, first of all, we should reevaluate how we evaluate quarterbacks, but at the same time,
right?
Yeah, at that point, then this is going to look pretty good, and they'll be fine, and they'll probably be back in the playoffs.
David K says, "Oh, wrong one." Since you mentioned my comment, I take back all the mean things I've ever said. But why would you say anything mean? How dare you? No, appreciate that, David. Yeah. So, all right, let's move on to the defense. Now we'll go to coverage. This is not great, and this is kind of flown under the radar. Is the coverage unit really falling off? I would say the linebackers are still great with Roquan Smith, who I love. He might be the best coverage linebacker in the league. And again, for a team that is known for I'm assuming they're going to play a cover 3/quarters based zone coverage next year, which means that the zone. That's going to mean linebackers come into play, and having Roquan there helps. And Danny Trevathan, who didn't have his best season in 2020, but has been a very good linebacker over his career. So we'll see. For corners, this is where things get a little bit tough. In fact, there's just not a lot of guys. You have Desmond Trufant, who Pro Football Focus had graded as the second worst corner in the league last year. Obviously, great career, but is on the tail end of it. And then Jalen Johnson, who was 2020 second round pick. So maybe he could take that second year jump. But, for safeties, you have Eddie Jackson, who all pro, but he's kind of just been fine outside of that one dominant season. And I want to see if Eddie Jackson, I mean, there's no getting around it. He did not have a good season last year, and he wasn't even great the year before. So I'm interested to see. I made a whole film study on it. I think a big part of it was safeties in Vic Fangio's scheme always look awesome. That's just kind of what happens. So that could be a big part of it. And Tashawn Gibson, who was good last year, but he's been 9-year career and has had some inconsistency issues. This is I have it as a tier 4 coverage unit. Some people might be surprised it's not tier 5, but they do play good team defense, a lot of these guys. And so that's kind of what I'm factoring in. Is I've seen, again, with the zone coverage, team defense matters a lot more, but it's still not a very talented group.
Yeah, and Desmond Trufant looked washed 2 years ago in his last season in Atlanta. He looked
Right.
extra washed last year. I can't imagine slotting him in as a starting cornerback right now in 2021. I think this is going to be rough. Like you said, I think Smith is a monster. He's going to cover a lot of ground. But if we saw what we saw out of Danny Trevathan last year, this year, that's basically canceling out everything you saw out of Smith last year, having him equally as bad in coverage and just doing, as a linebacker. And I don't know. I mean, doesn't it just feel like this could be like kind of the season of reckoning for this team? We've already talked about Nagy's on the hot seat, but there's been some guys poached off this defense now over the last couple of years, and you just rarely see defenses kind of hold up this level of staying power for this long. With this coverage getting kind of worse and worse, couldn't you just see this team kind of just getting torched next year and having a really rough season?
Yes.
So, yeah, all right, moving on.
Yeah. Well, so here's the counter to it is going to be the front seven, right? Because again, I already mentioned Smith and Trevathan for the linebackers. Interior, you have Akeem Hicks, Bile Nichols, and Mario Edwards Jr., not to mention the edge rushers, Khalil Mack, and then the Robert Quinn contract hasn't looked great, but there's still talent there. I had this as a tier 2 run defense and a tier 1 pass rush. So that makes it a 14th best defense. So it's mediocre. Again, I value coverage a lot. So even though you have a top 5 pass rush, some people would argue, good pass rush makes up for bad coverage. I don't make that argument. I think that's not true. It's just an expression. There's no data to back it up. So that's the positive, though, is basically Khalil Mack.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And, the thing is that one of the surprising things last season is I didn't think this defense looked good at all when Akeem Hicks got hurt. And when he wasn't playing, now you can say, a team loses its really good player. Of course, it's going to look worse. But this team just kind of looked bad at times when Akeem Hicks wasn't out there. And you could easily just double up on Mack and kind of not worry about it. So we'll see what happens with this team. They need those. They really need Mack, Roquan Smith, and Hicks to play 17 games, it feels like, because they can't miss a lot out of those 3 guys, because that's really what's holding up this defense right now.
Yeah, so I agree. Kicker, Cario Santos, that's tier 4. So as a whole, their defense, 14th, as I said, offense, 27th. This puts them as a 6.27 win team, 24th in the NFL, 12th in the NFC. This is it's not a mess, but it's not a great team. And the only way I can really see them being a playoff contender is if they get like tier 1 quarterback play from Justin Fields, which, given the fact that he's not even going to start, I would say it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see if they even get tier 3 quarterback play, because they haven't had that for a lot of years. But just, I mean, the thing is right now, I continue to say it with this Bears team. This team just feels like it's trending down, not trending up right now. Maybe Fields figures some things out and it swings back around in their favor. They figure some things out. Maybe with the new personnel and new coach, it works. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's trending in the wrong direction right now.
Yeah, gotcha. So, all right, Nicholas Gill, big Bears fan, says 7.16 win team. So we're not too far off from even Bears fans' realistic expectations going into this season. Well, what is your hope if you're a Bears fan? Is it, we talk about these rookie quarterbacks, it's just hope your quarterback looks good. Is that just it for Chicago? Is you just hope the Fields pick works out?
I mean, as much trouble as we gave it, like if, Robinson has like a 1,200 yard season, which is kind of what he does, and Kmet takes a leap, and Montgomery has another 1,000-yard season, 4.5 yards a carry. Like, all of a sudden now, that's probably a competitive team no matter who's the quarterback, right? As long as they can get those 2 guys the ball and Montgomery does his thing, then all of a sudden you have a solid team and there's pieces there that you can build around. The question is, are they going to be put in the right positions to succeed?
Yeah, that is the issue. Also, I see a hello to Luke G's field review in chat. Always nice when he can stop by. Yes, I think I agree. Want to move on to team number 2 now?
Yeah, we can move on to number 2 here. So until things change on one team's roster, I'm sticking with this pick. I mean, I had the Vikings at number 2, despite the issues with their offensive line coach, which I don't know how big of issues that's going to be anyways. So we'll see. I mean, I still think this is going to be a pretty good team. This feels like a bounce back season for them after really just a horrid season last season and things just not working out in their favor. And they still almost made the playoffs, I felt like. So they're a competitive team, and I think it's going to get even better. So yeah, I got the Vikings here at number 2.
Yeah. This is also so most teams I'm lower on than the general consensus because, if you gave an average fan, okay, how many wins do you think every team is going to get? They're going to end up with more than, 8.5 wins per team, right? Just because you naturally, I think, are more optimistic about teams. This is one of the few teams that my system has a lot higher than I think most people would expect. I think that it all kind of starts with the coaching a little bit. With, you have Mike Zimmer, who I had as 12th. Maybe I don't think I had him as 12th. I think I had him as 18th, I believe is what it was. I think I wrote my notes wrong. I believe I had him as 18th in the coaching rankings. But, really the question is, I feel like the offense, I don't love what they did last year of this super run heavy. Establishing the run when you have Dalvin Cook makes sense. But I think they went a little bit too far last year. And if you're going to try to, harvest these wins that you have in your talent, I think you do have to take advantage of your great wide receiving core a little bit more than they did last year.
And I think maybe they will, because I think that I think the one thing that surprised them was how good Justin Jefferson was so quickly. And that probably, they probably had this set game plan in mind for how they're approaching the season. And then Jefferson just exploded. So now maybe that they see they have two legit options at wide receiver. I think that they're just going to go into the season thinking, hey, we have these two guys. We still have Dalvin Cook back there who is going to be good. So I think that they have options to work with. But I do see a more pass first off, or not necessarily pass first, but more of a balanced offense.
Yeah. And, one interesting thing is, no Gary Kubiak. They have Clint Kubiak, the son of Gary Kubiak, now is the offensive coordinator. So I'm imagining there's going to be similarities there, kind of similar to, Mike and Kyle Shanahan. But I would also imagine that there's going to be some differences. Maybe with a younger guy, maybe we'll be more willing to sort of adapt to the times a little bit, in which it was kind of an outdated offense last year.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, the thing is like we say that there's probably going to be a lot of similarities and it might look exactly the same as far as the playbook, but just the rhythm of play calling, I think, is going to change a little bit, and that might make some changes to the play calls itself.
Yes, I like this comment because it says, Clint is such a whack name. This is coming from Noobmaster69. Maybe throwing stones in glass houses here, Noobmaster69.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. It's going to be, isn't that a movie reference? I don't know.
Is it? Okay, potentially.
Yeah, I think it was in the Avengers movie. I don't know.
I see. Okay, yeah. All right. Well, going on to someone who I feel like there's some sort of, I can make some sort of joke about New Master 69 and Kirk Cousins, but I can't quite come up with one. Kirk Cousins is someone who I feel like it gets a lot of criticism. Part of it is I think he just looks dorky. I think that's like a big thing against him. He's a tier 3 quarterback, though. He's not a bad quarterback, not elite, tier 3.
Yeah, I mean, and even based off of last year's number, probably borderline tier 2. He did
was
some
one
good
spot
things
away from tier 2.
Yeah, he did some good things last year. Did you almost bump this up to tier 1 with Kellen Mond as the backup quarterback option?
Yeah, if Kellen Mond was starting, easy tier 1.
So, this feels fitting, though. I mean, he's still a very good quarterback, and I think you can win with Kirk Cousins, as they saw last year with the struggling defense. They still won 7 games with him.
Yeah, the offense did finish 10th overall, even though I'm complaining about it. It should have been better. A big part of that was Dalvin Cook, who, again, he has injury problems. Now you have Alexander Madison, who's still a very good backup, but there's a difference between a top 5 running back room and a good running back room. The top 5 running back room means teams have to completely change how they play defense against you. And if Dalvin Cook can get these guys into zone coverage, and now you can take advantage with some of the receivers, that's what he can do, and he's been very effective at it. So it's a tier 1 running back room.
Yeah, and their third string Zamir Abdullah, who I might go to my grave thinking he's going to be a star running back one day out of Nebraska, but we'll see. No, I'm just kidding. I think I'm giving up hope on that finally. But Cook's awesome, so when he's on the field, it's going to be a big thing. And I think Mattinson, like you said, he's still going to be a very good running back behind him too. So I think it's a really good duo, and why they ran the ball so much.
Yeah, and then you go over to the receiving core, like I've kind of alluded to. Thielen and Jefferson, I mean, it's as good of a 1-2 punch as there is in the NFL. There's a couple guys, you could argue maybe this team or that team, but they're up there. The third option is, they just added D.D. Westbrook. They have Chad Beebe. They drafted someone who I like, Amar Smith Marset, who I think that I thought a lot of what he did well was on the outside. Is he going to be like a slot guy? Maybe, I don't know. You also have Irv Smith Jr., who is good in a limited role. He's a good receiver. So to me, this is a tier 1 receiving option grouping. I mean, especially with just largely due to the Thielen Jefferson combo.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic group, and then Irv Smith also I think is pretty good too at the tight end spot. So I mean, there's options here. There's a lot of explosive options. And I mean, you're just looking at this. It's a tier 1 wide receiver, tier 1 running back, and tier 3 quarterback options. It doesn't really get any better than that as far as offenses go, unless you look at like Kansas City.
Yeah. I agree. The chat, some very funny comments about Kirk Cousins is distracting me. I got to stay away from the chat sometimes. Finally, to go talk about the offensive line. This is the weak spot of the offense. We've been saying that for years. So again, for the offensive line coach who's leaving, it's like, okay, well, not sure how much you're going to be missed given the situation that's been there for the past few years. They got Christian Darrisaw, who I think will be awesome. I think they got a franchise left tackle with him. They also have Brian O'Neill as the other tackle for the interior. Center Garrett Bradbury, who I was so ready to take the next step. Good run blocker, yet to get together pass blocking. And then for the other interior guys, you have Urza Cleveland, who's solid, but then kind of the question mark is going to be that other guard position with will it be Mason Cole, who was a not great center for Arizona, or will it be Wyatt Davis, 3rd rounder? That's the main issue. They have some other solid pieces. Really, Darrisaw is the headliner, I would say, and he is a rookie, so it's a tier 4 offensive line for me.
Yeah, but it kind of is going in the right direction because it's like, like you said, you like to build with the tackles and center. If Bradbury can figure out some of the pass blocking stuff, Darrisaw coming in, O'Neill's probably been their best offensive lineman. So having those 3 options, I mean, those can be pretty good options if things kind of work out. I mean, I think Darrisaw, like you said, I think Darrisaw is going to be good. They just need the other 2 to kind of hold up there, and especially Bradbury. And then all of a sudden, that's a solid offensive line that you're working with.
Yeah, and so even with the tier 4 offensive line, this is an 8.76 win offense for me. I have them as the 5th best offense in the NFL. So the offense is, I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really fun group. I think you said it finished 10th last year. That feels right. And I expect similar results this season. I think Jefferson can get even better. I think Thielen's still awesome. Cook, I still think can put up some really good years. I mean, this is a really fun group, and I think the Vikings are due for a bounce back year, starting with this group and then a solid defense behind them.
Yeah, my one concern is just, hey, sometimes throw the ball to Adam Thielen. Hey, sometimes just throw it up to Adam Thielen. Throw it to Justin Jefferson. That's all I got to say. My only concern about this offense is don't be afraid to push the ball down the field a little bit more than they did last year.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that there is an opportunity that they will, because I just think that they didn't. I think they expected a lot of coverage to go Thielen's way. They weren't ready for Justin Jefferson to be this good. All of a sudden, those things started working, but it's like, well, we have all these game plans to run the ball heavily. So I think it's going to go more balanced, like I said, this season. And I think they're going to take more chances, and I think they should take more chances.
Yeah, moving on to the defense. So their coverage was bad last year, and they have they added multiple guys in free agency to do better than that, which I like. If you have an issue, fix the issue. That you gotta, if especially when it's a position of importance as coverage is, you can argue of how much did they improve. That's a discussion to be had. But you have, they added Brashad Breeland, Patrick Peterson to go along with the 2 rookies last year, Cameron Dantzler, who might have had the best rookie season last year, despite the fact that he can't even break a 4.6 40, but it was a zone coverage scheme that he was able to excel in. Jeff Gladney excelled in nothing. I still don't understand that pick. He's as good. I don't want to call anyone a bust after a year, but I'd be shocked if he turns it around. I never even got the pick when it happened. The rest of the defense, or the rest of the coverage unit, Harrison Smith, who's still great, Xavier Woods, who's solid, and then you have for linebackers Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr, and then Chad Surratt as a 3rd rounder. You can throw Nick Vigil there as kind of a replacement level. The question is going to be, I think one thing is, what defense are we going to see? My guess is a zone coverage defense because of how well Dantzler excelled there, which maybe Peterson could do well in a zone coverage scheme. I could see that. Maybe Breeland could do well there. I have it as a tier 3 coverage unit because I do think there is some talent here, but I'm a little bit just I'm interested in seeing how it's going to actually play out.
Well, this is better than the tier 5 coverage unit we had with those corners last year, right? So that's the big
Yeah.
thing. I honestly think it has to be a zone coverage because you can't play Dantzler out there and play man-to-man. I just don't think it's going to work. I mean, we could be wrong on that, but it just feels that way. But I think the Breland signing is pretty big because now they have 3 guys that I really like. I'm really interested to see what they do with Patrick Peterson this year. I think that he's kind of going to move into almost that big nickel role that we're seeing more and more in the league. I can kind of see him kind of operate in that situation. I don't know if he's going to be a pure like outside cornerback anymore. So I kind of see him transitioning into that role. We've seen older corners move into more safety sort of positions, and I feel like that would fit him a lot. So I think that they can do different things with him. And if Dantzler can repeat his rookie year and Breland can come in and be a solid self, then all of a sudden you can play with Patrick Peterson like that at defense and just move him around the chessboard a little bit and let him do what he does best, which is go and take the football away. So I'm interested to see what they do with him, and I think he can elevate this group if he's maximized to what he has left.
Yeah, and also like Harrison Smith's still good. Like that's another thing I think people kind of forgot. Like, they still do have one of the best. I know he's getting up there in age, but they have one of the best safeties. And talking about taking the ball away, I mean, how many guys on this roster on the secondary have had success taking the ball away? Peterson has. I think Dantzler has good ball skills. I could see him turning into one of those guys. Brashad Breland, Harrison Smith, like they got guys who can catch the football on their secondary.
Yeah, and it's crazy that Anthony Harris has gone, and that was probably their best ball skill guy for the seasons before, and then all of a sudden now they still got all these options to work with. So I think that this defense is going to be flexible at the back. I think it's just going to be better than last season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I think that it could be even better than tier 2 for me, especially if all these guys work out. Or tier 3, sorry, I think is what you had it at. It could be even better than that if these guys work out and move closer to tier 2 than kind of be that mediocre level.
Yeah, and to round out the defense, again, mentioned the linebackers already. Edge, you have Danielle Hunter, who is great. You have Stephon Weatherly, who isn't. You also have Dalvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce. That wasn't a shot at Stephen Weatherly. He's a fine player, but he's not, he's probably a replacement level, if anything. Pierce, good run stopper. This is the linebackers also will really help with the run defense. So it's a tier 3 run defense and pass rush for me, giving their total defense tied for 18th with all tier 3s here.
Yeah, and then Tomlinson up the middle too. This is the guy I really wanted in free agency for the Patriots. A really nice pass rushing interior defensive lineman's hard to come by. He's one of those guys that can make some do some damage there. Paired next to Hunter, I think that could be a pretty good defensive line of especially getting after the quarterback next season. So I think it's going to be I have this as a bounce back team. I said this already. I think they're going to bounce back, and I think they're going to have a pretty good season.
Yeah. The one thing that is not pretty good is the kickers, which, again, this is one of those things. I don't know why teams just completely neglect the kicker position. Riley Patterson, who is an undrafted free agent, it's crazy how football works, where it's like all the analytics say kickers, like, important. Like the numbers I use say that a kicker is at least as good as like a dominant edge rusher. And yet teams will literally say, we'll pick someone up and, as an undrafted free agent and hope it works out.
Yeah. I mean, we've continued to say this. I mean, kickers are important and they need to be able to make some field goals. So, it makes no sense to me, but if it hurts them a couple games, then you know why the Vikings missed the playoffs.
Yeah, but luckily for Minnesota, and this is tier 5, the kicker, luckily for them, they've never had really an issue with a kicker missing a big kick. So I think they should be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing like that's ever happened before in the franchise history. So no worries here.
Known for their clutch kicking over the years. So overall, I have this as an 11.02 win team. This is 7th in the NFL and 4th in the NFC. So this system loves the Vikings. The one thing I will say is that this is a team they underperformed what they were supposed to do last year. They were a 10-win team according to my system last year, only won 7 games, I believe it was. So that's maybe the issue is, and I put that on coaching, which I think they'll get better. I think this is probably a playoff team.
I do too, and like I said, I just think you did grade it as a tier 3 coverage unit, and I think that's fair. But just the minor upgrades that they made, I think, are enough to put this team back in the position. It was a season. It kind of seemed like a season from hell from those Vikings last year, and they still won 7 games with Mike Zimmer. So I feel confident that this group's going to be good again.
Yeah, and if they're not, is this the last year for Mike Zimmer?
Oh man, so you're saying if they go like 6-11 or 7-10?
Yeah, sure, something like that.
I mean, probably. Like, I just feel like teams, sports franchises in 2021, the length of a coach is not that long, especially 2 mediocre seasons in a row. They probably look at that point now to get an upgrade, or not really an upgrade, just a new face in the building. So I think probably it's a change of scenery at that point, and they just double down on offense.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, this is a talented enough team to make the playoffs. So unless it's just injuries or luck, the other way they would miss it would be with coaching. So I think that would be fair. You want to move on to the number 1 team now?
Yeah, so we'll go on to number 1 here. I mean, look, until things change on the roster, I'm just going to double down that these guys are going to play this season. I don't know how long they have to wait until I start to get nervous. But yeah, the Green Bay Packers still own this division in my book. I still think that they still have the reigning MVP on their roster, and I still think he's going to play this season. Next year is a different question. I think they improve things. I improve some things defensively. I think that they still have some great talent on their team, and I think they're going to be good again. I mean, there's not much else I can say about the Packers. They're a good team, and if Rodgers and Devontae Adams play, they could be a great team again and a Super Bowl contender. So I got the Packers at number 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. I played this out as though Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are both going to be there. If that's not the case, there's probably about a 4-win drop off with just losing those 2 guys. Because again, Rodgers is the most important one, but Adams too, and we'll get into that in a second. Let's start off. Matt LaFleur, 11th. In coaching rankings, very good X's and O's. You can argue some of the, a poor game management decision in the NFC Championship game, but as a whole, I still do like him a lot as a coach. And of course, reigning MVP Aaron Rodgers, that's tier 1. So this team is kind of built around a guy who might not be there. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. I think he will be. I've said that from the beginning. I think that he's 100%. I don't think he's going to turn down like the $40-50 million he would turn down from not playing. Just to, potentially host Jeopardy, which I should reiterate is not a job he's been offered. People keep saying that there is no official offer of him hosting Jeopardy. So, but again, like LaFleur and obviously like Rodgers as a player.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good situation. Obviously, you have the MVP, and some of the stuff I've heard about Jordan Love is just crazy this offseason, I think, too. Everyone's like, oh, they clearly don't love Jordan Love because they're doing all this stuff for Rodgers. Maybe they just don't feel like Jordan Love is ready to win a Super Bowl and win an MVP like Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
I don't think that's a knock on Jordan Love to say, oh, he's not Aaron Rodgers. They don't feel comfortable with him, that they got to offer him an extension. They could still feel fine with Jordan Love's trajectory, but just say, hey, he's not Aaron Rodgers right now. Breaking news. Nobody is. So, I mean, this is still a really good – I mean, we'll see what happens with this one. Right now, I still think he's playing, which makes this offense as dangerous as any in the league because he's the best quarterback in football when he's on the field.
Yeah. Let's go to wide receivers now. We'll do it a little bit out of order because I want to talk about them together because Devontae Adams obviously is another guy who's kind of come into this as like maybe he's going to hold out as well. Obviously, him and Rodgers both posted that the Last Dance image sort of cryptically. There's been a lot of weird stuff going on there. The rest of the wide receiving core is kind of rough. Allen Lazard is solid. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he's really just speed and nothing else. They did add Amari St. Brown, and they have Equanimeous St. Brown. So they got some brothers there. They drafted Amari in the 3rd round last year. They also, remember, they have Devin Funchess, who opted out in 2020. So, he could be a number 2 receiver potentially. So they do have some guys. Maybe they don't have like a solid number 2, but they have plenty of number 3s that you could sort of, if you play your cards right, can make work there. Not to mention, Robert Tonyan, who's very good receiver, kind of a mad blocker, but still you have Mercedes Lewis, who's 37, but he's still blocking well. And then they added Josiah Deguara. How do I knew how to pronounce that. I forgot it. he was a 3rd-round pick and kind of played like it last year. It's a tier 3 wide receiving room, and it's largely there because of Davante Adams.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's almost like, I'm trying to think. It's almost like when a star shooting guard leads a basketball team. Like when you lose like a Kobe Bryant from your team, for example, and you got to like patch together 20 points per game. And that's basically what the number 2 receiving option is for this group. It's like, we're just going to patch together 50 catches between 4 guys. I still like some of these guys. I still like Lazard, even though, he needs to be on the field. I still think he's a pretty good receiver. So I think they have some guys here that are options. Tunyon's a red zone machine. You could have told me Mercedes Lewis was anywhere between 35 and about 74, and I would have believed it at this point. He's been around the league forever, and like you said, he's a blocking machine. So I think that they have some options here. Maybe Amari Rodgers, too, rookie wide receiver, comes in, makes some noise. So I like some pieces here. But yeah, I mean, there's one elite option, then there's a bunch of guys. So that elite option, though, it helps a little bit to have Davante Adams on your team.
Yeah. And then too, also, so, I mean, that's the thing too. I'm just assuming that they're both going to play. So if they don't, that's like 4 wins and lost, and this team's not a playoff team probably. But unless Jordan Love comes in and wins an MVP. You have, for the running back room, you have Aaron Jones, who is, very good. He's their home run hitter. He's the only real home run hitter on this offense, I would say. Also, A.J. Dillon, who I thought looked solid in the little we saw of him. It's not quite tier 1. It is tier 2 to me, though.
Yeah, I mean, then that's fair, and it probably could be considered a tier 1 group with the way Jones performs. If Dillon can, show his stuff, he was obviously hurt a lot last season, so that added to it. But you put him in some goal line situations, some short yardage situations. I think Dillon can have a very good year, and this could be kind of that, almost that Marion Barber kind of performance from him this season, where he's just kind of that touchdown vulture, and I could see that sort of happening. And Jones, like you said, being that home run hitter, big play threat at the speed running back position. So I think it's a nice duo, and yeah, I mean, I think it's a good running back room.
Yeah. Also, I have a correction. I wrote the wrong thing in my notes, so I kind of Ron Burgundied a little bit. It's Amari Rodgers, not Amari St. Brown. And I got a little confused. I was confusing him with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not sure why I wrote that wrong. So just quick correction to what I said earlier. Yeah. And then finally rounding it out with the offensive line. David Bakhtiari, the clear headliner here, still probably, one of, if not the best tackles in the league. You then have Billy Turner as the other tackle. And for the interior, I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work, but you got guys like Ellington Jenkins, Lucas Patrick, and Josh Myers, all kind of versatile. So I'm not sure who's going to play where necessarily, but again, it's the Packers. They still do have a good offensive line. They lost some pieces. I have it as a tier 3 offensive line as of right now because of the lost pieces and because it looks like could be a rookie starting. And Billy Turner's solid, but he's not a superstar by any means. But again, there's still talent here, so it's tier 3 for me, which puts their offense as the 8th best in the NFL, even though it was best in the NFL last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still going to be a good group. Honestly, like they're one of the group. You could honestly put Packers offensive line as like a tier 2 or tier 1 for me every season. It doesn't matter who the personnel is. I think they just figure it out. I know people were complaining about the Josh Myers pick because I don't have the information in front of me. I don't have my centers remembered from the draft, but I know there was better centers in front of them grade wise. But at the same time, I'm always just going to trust the Packers know what they're doing there. And then another guy too is Cole Van Landen, who's going to be a backup tackle. The guy was a monster in high school. Wasn't quite live up to the expectations at Wisconsin, but I mean, if he's an All-Pro in 3 years at Green Bay, I wouldn't be surprised either, just because it's the Packers and that's what they do. So I just trust that they know what they're doing with their offensive line, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I think I agree. So let's move on to defense. We'll start with coverage. This coverage is interesting. So, safeties, Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos. It's a really good safety tandem. Also for linebackers, you have, Kamal Martin, who is solid. You also have Chris Barnes, who not great in coverage, and Devon Dre Campbell, who's kind of okay all around. Linebacking core, not the best. The corners is where it gets interesting to me because you have Jair Alexander, who's maybe the best corner in football. You have Kevin King, who's maybe the worst starting corner in football, and then Eric Stokes, the first-round rookie. And I think this team can kind of go with Eric Stokes. If Eric Stokes can come out and have like a really good rookie season, this could be like a tier 1 coverage unit. I have it as tier 2 right now because of that question mark, though. I'm a big fan of Stokes, but he is a rookie and he might take a year.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is like this group was like basically a top 10 unit with Kevin King playing the whole season. So, I mean, even if Stokes can play and be a little bit better than King, then all of a sudden this is probably a top 5 group. And maybe King gets a little bit better and that works out too. The one thing, like you said, is the linebackers, the coverage in this linebacker group, I don't think is very good. And I think that their secondary makes up for a lot of it. So we'll see if teams, I think teams are going to do things a little bit differently against this Packers group. Maybe they just start running guys basically across the middle and say, hey, keep up with us. We'll see what happens with that. I know the Buccaneers kind of took advantage of that, especially at the end of games. They got that big holding call too. So we'll see how teams attack this defense and attack going after guys like Alexander and Amos.
Yeah. To round out the defense with the front 7, you have, so for the interior defensive line, there's Kenny Clark, who's great. You have Dean Lowry and Tyler Lancaster as the other interior defensive guys. And for edge, you have Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, and Rashawn Gary. So there's a lot to like here. I do have it as a tier 3 pass rush and a tier 4 run defense. The run defense is mostly not great just because of the linebacking situation or, off-ball linebacking situation. Zadarius Smith is very good. Preston Smith did not have as good of a 2020 as he did in 2019, but Rashawn Gary did kind of look solid, maybe continuing to make steps up. So it's not a bad defense. I have it as the 16th best defense. I have this as an 11.22 win football team because Mason Crosby, tier 1 kicker, which is 6th best in the NFL, 3rd in the NFC, according to my system.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's fits, and I think that defense has room to improve too. I think it can get better. So I think you got to feel good about that if you're a Packers fan. I mean, there's one thing they're going to be talking about until week 1 of this season is what is this offense going to look like going into week 1? And that's going to decide a lot of the season because even if this defense improves, if the offense isn't there, that changes a lot. But I do think that there is room to improve for this defense.
Yeah, I think I agree. So, and one interesting thing about these teams is the way I have my system set up. The difference in the Packers being first and the Vikings being first is kickers. If they had swapped kickers, the Vikings I would have as the favorite to win the NFC North. So goes to show, like remember your kickers. They matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. Kickers are people too, so you want them on the field and you want them making field goals. So I mean, just consistency. You don't need a 55-yard killer. You just need a guy who can be automatic from 40 and in. And the Vikings, once again, don't have that, and I think it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so that is the NFC North. Any final thoughts on the NFC North, just as the division as a whole?
I mean, it feels so weird doing this right now. I mean, we're at what, July 25th here, and I mean, we've both said this. We both think Rodgers is going to play this season, but at the same time, like this entire preview would change in a month from now if Rodgers and Adams aren't on the team. It feels weird to say all this right now. I still think he is going to play, but it's just there's just so much uncertainty with this division, with the Lions basically restarting from scratch. The Bears are, who knows what the Bears are at this point. The Vikings still kind of have some question marks on this team, though I think they addressed a lot of it. And then the Packers have, the craziest offseason of any team in the NFL. This is such a wild division. I think it's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah. So let's do this. Let's play this out. If Rodgers and Adams don't play for the Packers, let's say they go out of the division, what would you rank it now? Would you go, what would your ranking be then?
Vikings, Packers, Bears, Lions.
Okay. Still have them above the Bears?
Yeah.
I mean, I think so. I think it's close, but I think they're probably, maybe Packers are a 7-win team and the Bears are a 6-win team, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's close. I mean, they both basically have tier 5 quarterbacks at that point. And probably I guess the Bears are still the tier 3 receiving group because they still have their star receiver.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think the Packers would still beat them out somehow. I mean,
they could cover. The Packers can cover.
Exactly. That's the thing, is they could really do that. I mean, the one thing is David Montgomery could go nuts against that defense. I kind of want to see that defense on the field. But yeah, I mean, I still got the Packers ahead just slightly.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, I guess it was crazy, how much star power the Packers have too, with Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. You could throw Aaron Jones in there if you want to. David Bakhtiari, Jair Alexander, even Zadarius Smith. Mason Crosby if you want to go there. They have they have elite players, and that's kind of I think what kind of separates a team like the Packers from some of these other teams is they have the stars, and at the end of the day, like that matters. If you can get a star, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a real thing. They have, those are all top five players at their position, honestly. And I'm saying Devontae Adams is a top five receiver because he is actually in the top five.
Yeah,
So they have top five players at all those position groups, which really help. And I mean, Alexander, because this defense a couple years ago was bad. Going in that same, I think that was the biggest difference between 2 years ago and this last year. Alexander's the real deal. I mean, he's been his leap has been a huge thing for them, and he is now in the conversation for best corner in football.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so that is the ranking. Next week, NFC West. This is always a fun division to talk about, the NFC West.
Yeah, and for anyone still listening, I don't mean to brag about myself, but I think I'm going to be throwing some 102 painting the corner fastballs next week as far as the hot takes go. So make sure
Okay.
to tune in next weekend. I got some takes for everybody talking NFC West football.
Wow, I'm looking forward to that. So everyone, be on the lookout for maybe how about this? If you're watching this after the fact or live, because we're about to go off, in the comments below, give your prediction for what Kyle his hot take is going to be, or tweet at us. You can do that. Let us know what you. Let's see who can guess correctly what Kyle's hot takes are.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a fun division to talk about. 4 teams are really competitive, and I think it's going to be interesting to see.
I have a guess. What's your hot take? Maybe your hot take is you actually secretly like the Rams uniforms and logo.
That is not my hot take.
Okay, not getting that hot, not quite that bold. All right, so that is our show. Thanks to everyone for watching. We might actually do a different time next week. I need to talk with Kyle with that after the show. So be on the lookout. Make sure you subscribe to the what's on the sideline JK on Twitter.
Yeah, follow us on the sideline JK on Twitter. We'll put any show updates if we need to change times then.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So again, Kyle, any final thoughts before we head out?
No, looking forward to the NFC North. It's going to be a fun division. And once again, #FunShow.
Yes, #FunShow. Thank you guys again for watching. And until next time, have a good one.
Peace.